to our clients. Our suite of offerings includes wealth management, trust services, institutional, commercial banking, including lending, as well as private banking. We are proud to partner with Commerce Lexington as the title sponsor for the Spotlight Series. We're very grateful that Commerce Lexington has worked so hard to provide a unique alternative to the normal in-person Spotlight Series. The virtual Spotlight program today is a great example of how businesses have adapted and found new ways to reach their clients and prospects during the COVID-19 pandemic. WealthSouth has also been utilizing technology and creative means to connect with our clients, prospects, and partners during these challenging times. We have been hosting an interactive series called Wealth Watch on how the pandemic has impacted families, individuals, and businesses. You can learn more about Wealth Watch by visiting our website, WealthSouth.com. We have a COVID-19 resource page with videos of our webcasts and other helpful information on the markets and regulatory environment. Or you can simply follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook. We hope that you will join us for one of our upcoming Wealth Watch. In closing, I thank Commerce Lexington, Ray Daniels, our moderator, and our esteemed panel of speakers for coming together today to share their insights on innovation and reopening business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for your leadership as well. When a crisis occurs, the most successful companies, business owners, and entrepreneurs are the ones able to face the challenges head on by adapting to the changing environment. We have 4 dynamic leaders with us today for a discussion about what's worked, what hasn't, what they are preparing for as they view the future of business and what could be our new normal going forward. I'd like to briefly introduce our panelists and thank them for being with us today. We value your time and we're very thankful. Susan Elkington, President, Toyota Motor Manufacturing Company. Toa Green, Owner-Operator, Crank and Boom Ice Cream. Sam Mitchell, CEO, Valvoline Inc.
Good morning.
Lennie Rhoades, CEO, Big Ass Fans. Thank you once again, everybody, for joining us. So to keep this fairly organized, my plan is to ask a series of questions and direct it to one person initially. And then if anybody has anything, we're about best practices. We're about trying to teach our business community and entrepreneur community about what you guys are doing and incorporating in your business. Any question that may not be directed to you, please do not hesitate to jump on and add any value that you have. We're here to learn and to process and to get better. So I want to start with Susan, and I want her to look back, if she can, briefly, and talk about once the shutdown or the stay-at-home orders began, talk briefly about how your company immediately adjusted. What were some of the main adjustments you made as far as working from home, rotational schedules? What was your first intuition? What was the first thing you thought about? What are the immediate things I need to do when there's discussion of a shutdown or some sort of shutdown that impacted my workforce?
So first of all, thank you for allowing me to join and to share our experience. I do think that is an important item because we can learn from everyone. I have learned so much from the great business leaders across the state of Kentucky and around the Lexington area. So for us here at Toyota, we were considered an essential business. So when we made the decision to shut down, it was a lot of factors going in. For the most part, we needed to make certain that we could maintain our team member safety. And the protocols that were coming out about how to go about doing it and understanding COVID-19 was so fluid. It was constantly changing. It was very difficult for us to stay up to what the latest standards were. And plus, we were uncertain what the demand would be for our products. So we made the decision to suspend production. Initially, we made the decision to only do for 3 days. And then we did 2 weeks. We never, for the life of us, thought it would be 8 weeks of no production of vehicles. So I think one of the key things from a reflection standpoint is to make certain that you have to stay focused on your team members and the care, but then also on your customers. As an automobile maker, people still needed their cars. Doctors were going to work. Grocery store workers were going to work, needed your cars repaired. So we needed to maintain some level of operation. And so we had to make certain that we could still produce those repair parts. Our sales division, even though the dealer shut down, sales continued. They were very innovative in their ways to be able to provide vehicles to our customers around the world and around the state. So I think one of the key items we had to do is how to ensure that we can maintain the production that was necessary to meet our customer demands, but yet still be able to keep our team members safe. And one of the things that we did, of course, is that anybody that could work from home, work from home. We did, our production workers, we were able to pay the majority of the time or ask them to use non-paid time or vacation time during those 7 to 8 weeks that we were off of production. However, some of the workers had to come into work. We still produced repair parts for vehicles during that time period. And then we also shifted to supporting our community and started building face shields. And one of the other, currently to date, we build about 500,000 face shields, both for the state of Kentucky and around the country, primarily in the areas where we have plants. But then also, we started saying, if we're going to restart, when we restart, and we're going to need this PPE, this protective equipment, we don't want to pull from the supply that's needed for the medical professionals. And so we started also producing for ourselves, both face shields and face coverings here at our facility to be able to support our operations. I think the key thing for us, though, was to stay in contact with our employees, with our team members. And we did that every 2 to 3 times a week. We would contact every single team member that we had to let them know what was happening. So happy to say we are back up in operations. We were down for about 8 weeks. But currently we are probably about at a 80% capacity level, and will continue to increase.
Thank you, Susan. Would anybody else like to elaborate on that or discuss, if you look back on how that process worked for you individually? Sam, perhaps you have something you want to add?
Yeah, to build on what Susan said, initially there was so much new information coming out every day. It was challenging just to keep up with it, and making the right decisions were challenging because you had to consider multiple different types of facilities. And so in addition to our production plants and warehouses, obviously we operate a lot of stores, including our franchisees, 1,400 stores across the US and Canada, and then our offices. And so what we found is that we needed a pretty broad team to help us make those decisions as to what was right to keep our teams first and foremost safe, and how we would interact with customers, keeping our customers safe. And so while we had a steering committee that reported directly to me, we had working teams, that were expert in each one of those different areas to help us make the right decisions for the total company operation. So it was a process that worked really well for us to have the experts and yet coordinate the decision making with the broader team. But that up front, the key decisions were, do we keep our stores open, for example? Is it safe? Can we operate safely in the stores? What is really the right thing to do? And I would say what really became important to us is just falling back on the values that we've established and how we operate as a company. And when we keep our people first and think about safety first, it really guided all the decisions. Obviously, the financial decisions around keeping the stores open, that was critical too, and trying to meet the needs of the customers. So as Susan and Toyota produces those cars, Valvoline's in that position to maintain those vehicles, and it was determined that Valvoline and the services that we offer are critical and need to continue. But at what sales impact? How would we manage through the sales impact, knowing that with reduced travel, the need for our products and services were certainly going to be a lot lower. So the key thing that Susan said was the communication and staying connected to the team. That was a commitment that we made early on, is we're going to avoid furloughs, and we're going to keep our hourly teams engaged And even if we're overstaffed for a period of time, we're going to take care of the broader team. And that proved to be maybe our best decision, because they paid us back in spades with taking all the safety precautions to heart, with really no complaints, instead giving us feedback on how we could be even safer and how we interact with our customers in the stores. That was, one of the more critical areas. And so it enabled us to keep our stores open, keep our team engaged, and keep our customers satisfied. And as a result, I think we've been growing market share because of the model that we've created. So communication, definitely key. Staying engaged with the broader team, key to success.
Well, Sam, you mentioned something, both of you guys mentioned really critical stuff in that's wrapping around safety and communications. But the key to any business, of course, is people. And as we look back, the process that I'm trying to get businesses to understand and learn is to center their thoughts around their people. Because if we have future shutdowns, you have to get those best practices and lessons learned around your key people and key individuals. Tao, to that extent, can you speak to, you have all of these things happening, you have shutdowns happening, you're trying to manage your people process, you're trying to understand what changes need to be made to my policies, specifically, how do I make sure I'm legally hardened to a certain extent? Tell me your thought process as the shutdown began and you were trying to center and put your thoughts around people.
Sure. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and thanks to Ray and Angela and Chamber for inviting me to join this wonderful panel. When we actually, heard rumblings of different things happening in China, early in January. So actually, we thought what our biggest challenge was going to be at the time, back in January, was going to be our supply chain, because we get cups and spoons and all sorts of other things from China, through suppliers from China. So we, the first thing we did was actually bulk up, and we bought 3 or 4 months supply of those things that were our essential items to operate. So at the time, we thought that was going to be our biggest problem. And then as things were developing and we were asked to shut down, we were already mentally prepared for this to happen. And so we had already been working on what that means. We didn't know what the guidelines would actually be. We didn't know what the restrictions would be. And I would echo what Susan and Sam said about communication. And we're a tiny business compared to Valvoline, Toyota, and big ass fans. But I think we also had similar challenges with communication. Just we didn't have time to explain a lot of things. We just had to make decisions quick. We had to just say we can't have a 6-person meeting about this. We're just going to have to decide on how we're going to do things. And we're lucky that for our business, we were already selling things online. So we already had an online presence. It was just a matter of shifting to doing curbside instead of in-person service. But in terms of policies and people, what we decided that first week was, well, we're going to open for curbside. We're not going to have anybody come inside due to the restrictions, but we're not going to lay anybody off. We're just going to hold tight for at least a couple weeks and see what that looks like. Similar to what Sam said, if we're overstaffed, we're just going to eat that, because it's more important for us to maintain a little bit of stability. And knowing our team, having to send them home and have them sit at home and not come to work is probably more, not even just on a financial side, but mentally, we got a lot of busybodies on our team. So having them go home and sitting and not having something to do, I knew would be really detrimental to their mental health. And we're all huggers too, so being able to at least see each other, even if it's digitally, we can't hug each other, but trying to keep that connection was really, really important. So we made sure to stay connected, at least virtually, our management team, and then of course our crew members that were in our stores on our front line, who were out there serving customers, would be able to build their own bond of this crazy thing that we're going through. And it worked out well, doing it that way. And I'm glad that that's what we decided, versus panicking and laying off a bunch of folks, and then ultimately we would have had to call them back anyway. So it actually worked out okay. And we just knew, and we set the expectation that day to day things would change, and that we're just going to do the best we can and take care of everybody the best way we could. And I think our team understands that they are a priority.
Thanks, Tal. So Lennie, how do you adjust to travel restrictions, remote working? How do you change the whole structure of how you do business on the fly?
I think that's a great question. So we immediately went into a 2-week shutdown. So we gave everybody, sort of an extra week of PTO to sort of regroup our thoughts, sort of late March, early April. It let us do some things on the manufacturing. We have both manufacturing and headquarters here. So we reconfigured the manufacturing space, reconfigured some assembly lines, put up some plexiglass and some other measures. We were considered an essential business, fortunately. On the office side, it was a little bit more difficult, right? So I mean, we have an open environment here. We may not be huggers, but certainly people are social animals here and like to interact. It took us a little bit longer to figure out. We split into an A crew and a B crew to facilitate social distancing when we were in the building. We went to extra cleaning. The reality that we found out is the remote working actually worked a lot better than certainly what I had feared, right? We were not a remote work environment. We limited travel, obviously. A lot of our customers, you couldn't get in there anyway, but we go in, and for those of you that don't know, Susan's one of my best customers. We go into large spaces and hang large fans, and you have to go in there and look at those spaces. And so we even figured out how to do some of those kinds of things, virtual site surveys with technology. And we're pretty blessed here. I think we have a younger than average workforce. Our average age is somewhere around 30 years old. So they adapted extremely fast to the technology and the Zoom calls. And frankly, the customers were adapting very fast to the Zoom calls. And I think, I'll speak for myself. I had a lot of fear about sort of how's this all going to come back up and work. We rely on inbound calls, and so we were going to have a distributed inbound calls center. And my IT department did a great job of being able to do that. But I think we were blessed in a sense that everybody else was forced to sort of work remote and figure it out as well. And my team would tell me that they actually had better luck getting a hold of many of our customers, because people were sort of grounded in their home offices. They were in some ways easier to find. But it's not been without its hiccups, but largely, I think our folks have been pretty responsive, pretty adaptive. And I guess maybe because we're all faced with some flavor of this, right, of having to figure out how to work in a new way, that it wasn't like we were the oddballs and the anomaly guys going, wow, you're really hard to do business with now. And I think we care about customers, and that's very important to us and sort of our ethos. And so I think the team did a good job responding to the remote work, using the technology, Zoom and other things, and we're able to compensate really well.
So along the lines, Lennie, I've heard you speak many times, and thanks for that response about supply chain. And this was the ultimate disruptor of supply chains. And a lot of companies, as they try to figure out this experience that they had, realized they spent a lot of money trying to get the products and services they needed to conduct their business. What have you learned about supply chain? What are some of the things that we can innovate around that? And I've heard you speak about that before, and give me your thoughts on that.
Sure, I'll be happy to. So we have some critical suppliers where we were sole sourced, and some of those were in China, where it was hit first. So it's sort of this, we were watching very closely, what's going to happen. We had some supply disruptions early on that we were able to work around. So I'd be fortunate by the time it got to us, we sort of very well understood our supply chain, the whole Chinese tariff thing, kind of whatever your view on that is. It forced us to have a degree of awareness on sort of the supply chain much higher than what we normally would have. And really, Ray, what we are driving hard for now is, obviously we care about cost. It's a competitive world, but that flexibility and continuity of supply, and we're certainly, there's no surprise, like lots of other folks are. We're looking at North American suppliers in new lights. We spend a lot of money on air freight to try and compensate for that. And you look at, okay, well, maybe something's a bit more expensive here. Well, not when I have to air freight things all around the world. So I think we're taking a little bit more of a holistic total cost view of what the supply is. And then, the most expensive parts on earth are the ones where I didn't get to sell them, right? And so the cost for me of being out is extremely high, like it is for all of us. And so I think it's recalibrated us a bit on cost will always be important to us, right? I mean, you have to pay attention to costs. It's really not an option, but I think, not being blind to the risks of where things are made, what our suppliers' capacities are, sort of what the freight implications are. For a while we couldn't get containers. So there's, a really heightened understanding the weaknesses in the supply chain in its totality, and frankly, looking for, in many cases, sources that are a truck ride away as compared to a boat ride away.
Okay. Anybody else want to take a swing at supply chain disruption? Okay, we'll move on to the next question. So that's a kind of our look back, which is good. Let's fast forward to where we are right now. We're open in some sort of capacity, most of us. And what are you learning about the crisis right now, innovatively for your company, that you think you will keep or that will change the way you do things going forward? So, in other words, the past, 8 to 12 weeks have taught us a lot. And what have we learned that we think we'll keep amid this crisis? And Susan, you want to go first?
Sure, I can do that. I think there's some things that we've learned is that, core values, you're not going to change your core values of your company. So, we have respect for people and continuous improvement, that during these times of crisis, that you go back to those. And I think those are one things that we won't change. But some of the things that we've changed that I think will definitely be things that we will keep is, when this all happened, one of the things that we did is we wanted to make sure that we can have business continuity. And what that meant is that instead of having 9 million square feet, which we have here, and over 8,000 employees being as one big company, we started breaking things up into smaller business units and not having the business units interact personally with one another. Everything was done virtually. And that really shifted the personal ownership of the business to a different level of the organization. And the speed of improvements and ideas and being able to adjust to what that need is of that business, be it a powertrain where they're building engines, or if they're stamping panels or injecting molded parts, that they can make those adjustments themselves, but yet still have continuity across. So I think that is one thing that's been a good positive for us. The other thing that we've done, and sort of Lennie talked about this, is this Zoom meeting and virtual. I think person-to-person contact is important, but we've learned how to do business virtually and still create good ways to talk to one another and utilizing technology. We had switched to Microsoft Teams during this whole pandemic, which is not the best time to make a change like that, but it was what was scheduled already, and we did it. And so we can actually do virtual tours on our production floor and look at new products that are being introduced and talk to our counterparts in Japan all at the same time versus physically get on a plane and getting over there. So I do think that those type of technologies are things that we will continue to use. And as Lennie sort of said, is everybody's in the same boat, so nobody's really fighting it. Everybody's trying to figure out the best way of doing this. And it's been a huge impact on how we operate. Even now, we have plants in Canada and Mexico that can't come into the United States. So we are doing things virtually for those facilities so they can get their equipment, so they can they have suppliers that are from here that we will do the reviews for them, and they can still make their own decisions, but we're physically able to be there for them.
Okay. Sam, you have some thoughts around, if you had to put your visionary hat on, what are some things that you're doing now do you think you guys will keep doing?
Yes, certainly with regard to how the team operates and the ability to leverage the technology. We had also moved to Microsoft Teams, fortunately last fall, but I would say a lot of people had not yet engaged in it, but at least we had it up and ready to go. And when we began to work from home, having that tool in place, it was impressive just how fast people learned and adopted the tool and began to communicate in ways that kept everything moving forward. It was impressive. And even think about the challenges of calling on your customers, as Lennie was talking about. Not being able to be there physically was a challenge, but some of the technology tools that are available to maintain that contact with your customers, whether that's via video conferencing or some of the digital tools, they're there, and our customer touch points actually increased during the last few months versus the pre-COVID-19 period. So just the resiliency of the team and the adaptability of the team was impressive. It's said that, when you go through a crisis, that's when your character is revealed. And I knew we had a great team, but just some of the stories that came through and the extra effort that our team went through to keep things moving forward, I just couldn't be more proud. Just to share one hero story was one of our service center managers in New York State. They were one of the first to require face masks, and we had been struggling to find enough face masks for our team, and so the stores were going to be shut down the next day without being able to operate with those face masks. This woman pulled out her sewing machine and overnight sewed 60 face masks for our team, so we could open up the next day in that region. It's just one example of people going above and beyond, demonstrating their commitment to the company, their commitment to their fellow team members and our customers. I think we come out of this stronger than when we went in many respects, in how we operate as a team, and then leveraging the technology so that when we're remote, we can keep things moving forward. I think the other side of the question, Ray, might be what implications or changes do we see in terms of customer behavior, consumer behavior, and in our business then driving behavior? How do they think about driving versus flying? How fast does that recover? And we're seeing some good progress there, and a lot of encouraging signs. But I think it's too early to say like how certain behaviors will impact businesses long term. But it's really important time, getting back to innovation, to consider what the long-term implications are on society, whether it's here in the U.S. or in markets around the world.
And
Tal?
Greg, can I add to that?
Yes,
Can I-
Susan, yes.
Sam's comment there is very true, because the question is this going to be a short-term impact on how people drive? Like for our business, are they going to do ride sharing? Are we going to go back to that? Or are we not going to go back to that? And even where people live at, we had really gone more urban. Are we going to continue to see that trend? So it's interesting. It's something that we're really going to have to watch as businesses to see where these trends, are they short-term, are they long-term, and really what the impact is on us.
Okay. Well, Lennie, let me go to you quickly, and give us some thoughts about what you will be changed with your company.
So for us, we move air, and there were a number of, as all these things were happening, the CDC, with conflicting statements, there are a number of people that turn their fans off, which becomes a bit of an existential threat for the business. And so we were and remain very concerned about that. We've got a bright group of product managers and engineers. There's actually some older established technology around, both with ultraviolet germicidal irradiation and then ion irradiation. And as it turns out, you take some of these older technologies and you marry those up with fans, you can take a bad guy and turn it into a good guy. And so we're scrambling like mad. And as Sam said, it's very fast moving, and there's a lot of uncertainty, but we think that we'll have an opportunity to take this negative as people think about air and are worried about air and worried about their health, whether it's SARS or influenza or otherwise, marry up some technology in a unique way and deliver it into the places where people sort of work, live, and play, and help reassure them that they're going to be safe. And so we're figuring that out on the fly, putting a ton of resources in it. It's really motivated the whole organization that there's something we can rally behind. So everybody went from, oh my God, we're going to be out of business, into, oh my God, we can really help make a difference, protect ourselves from a company standpoint and a viability, but really do some good in the world, and deliver some innovative products here. So, I think it just sort of goes to show these things, you never know how they're going to evolve. And of course, the last chapter hasn't been written, but sort of a fundamental threat for us. We think we can turn it into a fundamental opportunity.
No, that's a fantastic example. It really is. We'll have to continue to share that with folks. Tal, what about going from air movement to ice cream?
Well, the good part is ice cream has been around a very long time and has lived through many different things in the world. So in that sense, I have a little bit of comfort. But yes, we've had to change what a classic ice cream shop looks like. And now so much of what we do is online. And, we're already poised to do that a little bit. But yeah, talking about customer behavior and trying to figure out what it is that is going to be the best way to serve them has been the most interesting ride for us, because generally people come into a store, we give them some ice cream, they pay us for that treat, and then they walk out of our store. But we found that a lot of folks were, changing and shifting to wanting pints, so we kind of turned into a grocery store over this time, which has been really interesting. And so in 1 week, we were pretty much increasing our volume of pint production by about tenfold, which is very different. And so we had tubs and tubs of ice cream sitting in inventory, but then we had to make all sorts of other pints to meet the demand, which was fantastic. And we're very lucky that we were in a position to be able to still keep serving versus other restaurants and other food service type businesses that might not have had the capability to do that. We're able to adjust and be able to do that. But as for things that we've learned, our team had actually suggested curbside a long time ago, but I fought it for a really long time. I was like, we can't do that. We're doing too many other things. We don't have the space to do that. And then suddenly when all the other options were gone, hey, guess what? We're doing curbside. So that's one thing that, now that we have the system down, it's like, well, why don't, there's no point in taking it away, especially when customers are at different places in terms of their comfort level of coming inside, and you've got team mask and team no mask, and everyone's got their own opinion on what they want to do to stay safe. And so curbside is here to stay, and it's great. I'm glad that by force we were able to adjust, and I also am trying to become a better listener as well.
Well, thank you guys for sharing. I think that's some really great feedback for our audience. I do want to stay right there in the spirit of sharing. If you guys don't mind, can you share something that you would have done differently when addressed with this pandemic, or something that you would have changed in the way you responded to it? And whoever wants to go first on that question, that's a sharing question. Sam, looks like you want to go first.
Oh, yeah. I'll take it. And back to tout, my ice cream consumption is definitely not going down.
That's good. Thank you.
Keeps us going during the crisis. I don't know that we would have done anything differently than what we've done. I'm really pleased with the actions that we've taken, and I think it speaks to how we approached decision making, that it wasn't on my shoulders or any single individual's shoulders, but hearing from different experts in their areas really helped us through this period. But I would say that one of the biggest challenges, especially through that first month when information was changing so fast, it was hard to keep up with it all, and there were so many different voices based on what you'd hear in the news, but also for us as a public company, certainly some strong voices on our board as we worked closely with them and kept them informed. Some of the banks that we work with and the access to information that they had and the strong opinions that they had, and there was a period there, where I felt significant stress on what are the right moves that we need to make given the wide range of potential scenarios for the business. And at the end of the day, it came back to just recognizing that for me and for my leadership team, we're the ones that know the business the best, and we trust each other, and we mapped out a plan. We considered different actions, but when it came down to finalizing that plan, very much valued my close-knit team that provided me really good counsel, and we debated, and we ended up in a really good place, and I think we made the right call. So I'm thankful for that. But I got to say, it was challenging given just the amount of information, those competing voices and opinions, and that decision-making process. It was it's good to listen, but at the end of the day, you gotta own it, and it's got to be your plan that you really believe in, based on what you know about your team and what you know about your business.
Okay. Anybody else want to add to that, or that was very good, Sam? Thanks for that. Lenny?
I would chip in with, I think Al talked about being, sort of a bit top down, and Sam, you are as well, right? I think in a perfect world, I would have liked to have listened more and taken some time to get some more input, but we were going so fast. I don't have any tremendous regrets, but I think from an ongoing best practice cultural viewpoint, we certainly don't like to be super autocratic here and be top down, although the nature of the events, we really felt that was the best way to act. And I think, if I could, figure out how to go back and fix it and be a little bit more inclusive with a broader group of folks, I would. I don't know that, I can't tell you that I would have done these three things differently, right? I just think that, as you look back on it, it was a bit more top down than what we would have liked.
And I'll sort of add to it. One is I wish I would have shined up my crystal ball a little bit more before this whole thing started. But I think as all of us are talking about, I mean, if you really have a really great team that you work with, you're going to figure it out. You're going to have some stumbles, but you're going to figure things out. And I've been really impressed with our team here at Toyota, with both from our region and then, us being able to reach out globally. I think in hindsight, there's probably two things that I would have probably done just somewhat different. One is, I think I would have reached out sooner to some of our local companies here in Kentucky. I was learning great things from all these companies, Toyota companies around the world, but really to know about Kentucky and Kentucky in general, how businesses work, and I wish I would have reached out a little bit more earlier with some of the companies that stayed in operation that gave us some great ideas. Once we started doing that and we're able to get connected with more local vendors, even on things like thermal scanning, and I mean, it was unbelievable how quickly things happened that we were able to do. I wish I would have done that sooner. The other one is I don't think we gave enough credit. We are builders here. We build cars here. We were very much about the nuts and bolts of putting the physical changes into our business that were necessary to keep team members safe. I would have spent a little bit more time on how team members feel and their behaviors. To change behaviors, there's so much that goes into that. We all have different beliefs. We all have different habits. And recognizing, as Tal mentioned earlier, you got some that are, hey, we got to have the mask all the time. Other ones, no, that's not necessary. And you got everybody in between. And so that we should have done a little bit more of that earlier. I think it would have helped us along in our transition. We did end up doing it and spending time, and we have to spend a lot of time on that to recognize that we're doing this to protect all of us. It doesn't necessarily mean it's about my personal belief on some of these things. It's about what we got to do best for our 8,000, 10,000 people that work here on site.
All right. Thanks for sharing, guys. We appreciate that. Just got a couple more questions. The reason we had every one of you guys on today, because you guys are key leaders in our organization, in our community in Central Kentucky. And as key leaders, we are sort of dealing with a crisis on top of another crisis. So in the middle of this pandemic, our country is facing really a racial crisis, so to speak. And there are a lot of voices that are out there looking to make sure businesses have a role in how we shape our country going forward. So we couldn't do something like this without asking, what is your company's policy or plan for diversity and inclusion, hiring, procurement, and goals or employee training around sensitivities or implicit biases or those types of things?
I can jump in on this one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's been a really interesting shift in the way the dynamic has changed with racial justice in this country. And as a business and as an individual, we've always fought for justice in all sorts of capacities. But when things really started to shift after the death of George Floyd, and we saw all the protests, it really was an opportunity for us to put the mirror up against ourselves and say, are we really doing enough? Are we really, these are the things we believe in. And, you know, our mission statement is create joy, ignite laughter, inspire compassion. And I feel like we have done that. But are we doing it in a capacity that is helping the Black community specifically? And the answer was no, we weren't doing enough. And I took it upon myself to figure out what it is that we needed to do, even as a tiny, small company. Everybody can do something because we're in this country together. And the only way we're going to heal and come together is if we all take actions. And, you know, whatever those actions be it small or large. And I'm excited to be here on this panel speaking with this group of CEOs, because you all have an incredible amount of platform and influence to lead our community in this manner. For us personally, what our company is doing, we started these charity pints during the pandemic, where $2 from every pint was going to go to a local charity. And that we've been able to raise about $20,000 from that for our own local community. And so going forward, at least through July, $2 of every one of our special small batch pints is called Black Mamas Matter Alliance. And we're finding that, you know, just giving to a charity isn't enough. We are looking at our own hiring practices and also getting outside help. So we're hiring a consultant to come in to talk to us about inclusion, diversity, hiring practices, implicit racial bias, all these things that I think are things that we need to build from the inside out. And also looking to create really meaningful long-time partnerships. I think it's one thing to donate to a charity, but I think what's more important for us as a team, if we're really going to tackle this issue, is to build long-term relationships and to really dig into these things that are really uncomfortable to talk about for a lot of people. So, you know, it's a process, and I'm looking forward to talking to other leaders about things that we can do together.
Thanks, Al. Sam, do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, those are great comments, and I do think that, you know, the big question that we all need to ask is, are we doing enough? And certainly at Valvoline, and for a lot of corporations, you know, diversity and inclusion is not new. It's been discussed and promoted for a number of years, and I would say it certainly has been part of our culture and the commitment that we have. And yet what happened, it created an opportunity to reinforce where we stand on these issues and how we feel about discrimination. And it was encouraging for me as I communicated that to our team, the type of feedback that we got, that people said, yes, this is who we are. Thank you for reinforcing what we're about. But the challenge, as I see it, is you know, what happens next? What actions can we take that are over and above what we've done in the past? And so for me right now, it's time to listen and learn, because while I maybe thought I understood things, I guess now today, I think I felt I understood things better than I really did. And I've listened to some friends in the African-American community, and they're helping me see some things that maybe that weren't as clear going into what we have just been through. And so that can inform us and motivate us to take further actions that have an impact certainly on the community, but also within Valvoline too, and some of the practices that we have and where we can get better.
Thank you, Sam. Susan?
Hey, Owen, Sam, I want to echo your comments. I mean, I think, you know, Toyota has been recognized over and over again for their D&I initiatives, but even with that being said, there's always more that we can do. And with the unrest that's happened, it has really opened up the doors for conversation. and not, you know, in our communities, but also within our own walls here at Toyota. And it's been very impactful. The stories that we hear and things that I would never think about, because that's not my world, because I am not Black. And I think as any leader, if you don't want to make change, then we're not listening. And so I think that as leaders of companies, we do have influence. And it's important that we are making changes internally into our own companies that will influence externally, but then also supporting the organizations and the voices that truly know what the changes need to be and help to make those happen. And as Teo said, yes, that's partly with money, and we do support a lot of different organizations, but it also has to be with our hands and our hearts to truly make that happen. And it's not going to be hey, in a month we're going to have everything done. It's going to have to be a continual effort from that standpoint. And we have a very strong business partnering group and ally group within our facility here, the African American Collaboration, which has been great teachers to me, which we are helping, we're utilizing to help guide us in what we're doing and what we're going to do, along with our business partners and community partners that we've had. But it is an important item that us as business need to take and support action.
Yeah. Susan, I'd like to thank you for your leadership and Toyota's leadership on diversity and inclusion. You've always had great leadership in Central Kentucky and beyond. Lennie, any thoughts? This was the last question, so any thoughts you want to close us out on this topic?
Yeah, I appreciate what everybody said, right? I mean, it's not like any of us had a playbook for any of the things going on in the world, but we're sort of in between Tao and the larger organizations here in terms of size. But one of our core values is sort of authenticity, and so we've really, and I've challenged my team to let's start with what we actually do. It's sort of easy to make a grand pronouncement and then never actually do anything any differently. And so we've been taking a hard look inside, and I don't think it's like it's terrible, right? But what are we actually doing or not doing before it's a message from me that says here's sort of motherhood and apple pie, right? Because I think I think are reasonably diverse with both sort of Black and some Latino folks, but are we really putting our money where we would like our mouth to be, rather than saying some things and then not acting that way? And I think that's resonated. One of the things that I'll say that through this time is particularly difficult. We're small enough that I can personally do, typically in a normal world, all employee meetings and really have a chance to get out and look people in the eyes. And this has made that much more difficult, right? So it's harder for me to personally get out and at least get a chance to look people in the eye and get a chance to let them look at me. And this is the kind of thing, at least in my view, does not suit itself well to a Microsoft Teams or a Zoom meeting, right? It's really that human connection and that personal thing. And that's one of the ones, we've sort of pushed some of this down to sort of some of our smaller team leaders. But I think it's a particularly frustrating time to be able to get out and really have those authentic conversations when you're sort of limited in terms of size and reach and ability to gather with folks. And so I don't have any answer for that, right? But it just seems to depersonalize something that's an inherently very personal connection that you're trying to make. If you really want to listen, it's hard to do it with an electronic barrier, in my opinion. So we're thinking about all those things, right? And what are the things that we can actually do to demonstrate our beliefs, rather than sort of send out company-wide emails and go about business as usual. So we don't have the answers, right? But we're certainly spending some energy to make sure that what we do is how we want to actually be seen in the world.
Thanks for that, Lennie. I appreciate all of your heartfelt comments from everyone. I thank you guys for sharing. I thank you for your time. All of you guys said a lot of key words. I just want to mention a few of them. You said it all, every last one of you. Core values: people, safety, communication, innovation, inclusion, and listening. Each one of you have mentioned that in your comments and answering all the questions today. We appreciate you guys being key leaders. I'd like to thank you for your time, for your insight. I want to thank our sponsors. I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, Jeff Zinger and WealthSouth. Any additional questions for anyone that was on this webinar, please utilize all the resources that are available to you from Commerce Lexington, all of our contact information, our websites, and just reach out directly to us. And to all, please have a great day. And thank you again, once again.
All right. Thank you, Ray.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Right.